So UFC Louisville just got done, and it started off extremely boring, decision after decision after decision. But at the latter end of this card, it was nothing but a barn burner. Turned into a fantastic fight after fight until the main event. We won't get into that quite yet, but oh my goodness, I am livid right now. So without further ado, let's get right into it. First fight of the card, we have Ryan Amanda versus Pooja Tumar. Pooja Tumar is the first Indian WMMA fighter. Tumar was landing big body shots. To be fair, both women were landing some pretty big body shots, but Amanda was definitely headhunting a lot more. Both ladies showed a lot of potential, and I'd say this was a pretty good curtain jerker to start off the events. This was also an extremely close fight, but one thing I do have to say is, how do the judges give a 30-27 for Ryan Amanda, and then the next judge gives a 30-27 for Pooja Tumar? That doesn't make any sense. And that just goes to show you that the refs are watching different fights from each other, because there should be no reason, with the rules set the way that they are, that you get completely opposite scorecards. And they definitely need to explain themselves in an interview after the event. But as I said, both women did a fantastic fight. A lot of fun scrambles. Both of them were looking for the finish, but both of them are also extremely tough. Showed a lot of heart, a lot of grit. Pooja Tumar got the win. I wouldn't really call it a robbery though, just because it was a razor close fight, in my opinion at least. But the crowd was booing, which is fair enough. They probably thought that Amanda won, but Pooja Tumar got the dub in the win column. Next up, we have Cody Stamann versus Taylor Lapilus. This fight was a banger, very fun to watch. Both guys started off extremely active. Lapilus used his length very well. Stamann got a huge takedown in the third, where if he had more time and did that in the first and the second round, he probably would have won. But Taylor Lapilus used his kicks and his jabs, along with his straights, extremely well. Showed a very high fight IQ, but Cody Stamann's little T-Rex arms definitely were not doing him any favors in this fight. But at the end of the day, Taylor Lapilus got a very dominant, unanimous decision. But there was some fouls in this fight, and the new gloves don't seem to be avoiding eye pokes very well. To be fair, I don't think that they were ever really supposed to. I think it was more so an excuse for to get better looking gloves, at least according to them. Personally, I don't notice a huge difference. But yeah, Taylor Lapilus showed very good range management, very high fight IQ, very good head movement as well. And I'm excited to see how far he can go in his career, because he looked very good tonight. And next up, we have Eduarda Moura versus Denise Gomes. I thought the fight was about to get done really early in the fight, because Gomes had an extremely tight guillotine, but Moura got out of it barely, but she did. And Moura really needs to work on her cardio, because she was gassed out by the second round. She was huffing and puffing. And Moura shot like 20 takedowns and only got 5 or 6 of them. So it goes without saying that Denise Gomes has very good takedown defense. She's also very good on the ground. There was a lot of fun scrambles when it did hit the ground. And this is the second undefeated fighter that Denise Gomes has beat. She won by an extremely dominant, unanimous decision, and she's still only 23 years old. And I think by the time that she's 28, 29, 30, she's going to be a very big problem in this division, because she looked very good on the feet. She had very good anti-grappling. And Eduarda Moura came in like 5 pounds overweight. So even with the weight difference and not having to cut those 5 extra pounds, which are the hardest pounds to cut, Denise Gomes still got it done. And I'm excited to see her career in the future. Next up, we have another dominant performance. Marcos was extremely patient, had very good timing with the counters, while at the same time keeping the pressure on John Castaneda the entire time. Almost got the finish in the first round. He dropped him really bad. And in the second and the third, it was more of the same. Castaneda getting dropped, and Marcos cruised his way to another very dominant victory. The beginning of this card was very reminiscent of last weekend's card, just a ton of decisions. But yeah, Daniel Marcos is going to be a problem in this division, especially once he gets more and more experience in the UFC, because he only has like 11 or 12 fights right now. So he is still relatively green. And next up, we have Andrea KGB Lee versus Montana De La Rosa. This was an extremely sloppy fight, pretty boring as well. Not a lot of action, except for when Lee dropped De La Rosa with a spinning back fist, but she got up immediately and she didn't get fully dropped, she more so took a knee. And I'm not sure if it was an official drop, but I feel like it should be. But there was a lot of decent scrambles. De La Rosa was winning on the feet, she was winning on the ground as well as landing the cleaner strikes, winning the wrestling. And at the end of the day, she got a unanimous decision, and Andrea Lee did not show a very high fight IQ at all. And I wouldn't be surprised if she gets cut after this, because she's lost like 4 or 5 in a row now. She hasn't won since 2021, I believe. Next fight, we have Brad Katona versus Jesse Butler. This fight was very boring, but Brad Katona was extremely dominant from bell to bell. Jesse Butler probably will get cut. He was way too comfortable just hanging out on bottom, not really doing much. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see Butler get cut from the UFC. His striking looked okay in the beginning, but Brad Katona is very good on the ground, very good on the feet, very good in the clinch as well. And he just, like I said, extremely dominant performance from Brad Katona. Next up, we have an extremely impressive performance from Charles Radke versus Carlos Paredes. I was picking Radke in this fight, but Paredes is an animal. He is very tall, very long, and Paredes showed very good head movement, very good striking. He landed a brutal knee to the liver, and Radke was folded up like a lawn chair. He couldn't stand up even if he wanted to. He got the finish in the very first round. Extremely impressed by him. Excited to see where he can go in his career, because I think he could be a huge problem. He did ask to get on the Aussie card in Australia, obviously, but that's a relatively quick turnaround, so I'm not positive. But his daughter's there. He asked the UFC. He put on an extremely impressive performance. Plus, he's been getting finishes since 2019, 2020, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him turn around pretty quick, especially after finishing a prospect like Radke, because Radke can hit like a truck, and Paredes made short work of him in impressive fashion. Next up, we have Thiago Moises versus Ludovic Klein. This was a pretty good fight. Thiago Moises did a very clean hip toss, and Klein showed everybody how good he was on the feet and how good his anti-grappling really is, because whenever Moises got him on the ground, he just popped right back up like a spring. Very good performance from Ludovic Klein. Won a unanimous decision, dropped Thiago Moises multiple times, almost got the finish a few times as well. But Thiago Moises, he recovers quick, and he is as tough as they come. But yeah, it was a pretty underwhelming fight outside of Klein dropping Thiago Moises. Next up, we have a very dominant performance as well, and a crazy first round from Puna Soriano versus Miguel Baeza. Baeza had a deep heel hook and a tight knee bar, but Soriano was blasting him with shots, not putting up with any of that jazz. And at the end of the first round, Puna landed some big elbows in the clinch, and it was just more of the same, more or less, because Puna outstruck him 236 strikes to Baeza's 26, and Soriano was just beating the daylights out of him on the ground. But yeah, that was very unanimous decision, very impressive performance from Soriano. He showed very good grappling. I don't know what happened to his power, because if you look at his pre-UFC days, he was starching fools. It was rough. But yeah, that was a worse whooping than what I do to my meat on Valentine's Day, because sheesh. And next up, we have another extremely impressive performance with Julian Marquez versus Zach Reese. Zach Reese smoked Marquez bad in the first 20 seconds. He ripped to the body with a kick, then went up top with the hands, dropped him with an uppercut, and then finished with ground and pound. Extremely dominant, extremely impressive as well, because Julian Marquez, he's a beast. But Zach Reese is a problem. He has submissions, he has very clean striking. His UFC didn't go very well. He got knocked out, but outside of that, his Contender Series fights, he was smoking them. He just made short, easy work of Julian Marquez. Absolute savage KO. And I'm excited to see how Zach Reese moves forward after this fight because, yeah, he's definitely going to be somebody I'm watching for. And next up, we have another insane performance from Bruno Ferreira versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Bruno Ferreira is a madman. He landed 2 spinning elbows. First one had Dustin on wobbly legs. He was stumbling everywhere, bumping into the cage. And Bruno was just smothering him, landing big shots. Then he threw another spinning elbow, and it was night-night. He was done. You don't want to stand and bang with Bruno Ferreira, because geez Louise, they don't call him the Hulk for no reason. That was also in the very first round as well. Next up, we have Raul Rosas Jr. versus Ricky Turcios. This was a fun fight even though it was almost entirely on the ground. They had an insane pace, a lot of insane scrambles. Ricky Turcios had a rear naked choke on Raul, but that chin is so pointy and so big that I'm not convinced you can get your arm in there. There was no chance Ricky was submitting him with that. Both guys showed extremely high level of grappling, as well as very entertaining scrambles. But at the end of the day, Raul Rosas Jr. is him at only 19 years of age. He's only going to improve. And he still has his kid body, even though he looks jacked in there. He got the submission. Very impressed. He's hands down my favorite Mexican fighter right now. And he looks like he was that kid in school that was biting kids and then laughing about it. Because he's like the Tasmanian devil once that fight hits the ground. He is jittering with excitement. And what else is he going to do? He may be ugly, but fighting is his life. He wants to buy his mom a house. He asked Dana for 100K, 100 bands. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him get it because he's about to make the UFC a ton of money. Raul Rosas Jr. is him. He is a certified beast. You can put a stamp on it. Next up, we have my personal favorite performance on this card with Dominic Reyes versus Dustin Jacoby. Dominic Reyes has returned. He got the knockout in the very first round. He wasn't gun shy like I thought he would be. He beat a kickboxer that fought Alex Pereira. Pretty sure Jacoby fought Cesar Almeida as well. So yeah, Dominic Reyes knocked him out, landed a crazy knee in the clinch, and he finished the fight with a straight left hand, and it was money. Dominic Reyes was extremely happy. You could see it in his eyes. His coaches were losing their minds, and his coach is his brother, so yeah, I understand why they were losing their minds. And if you bet on Dominic Reyes, you earned a bag tonight, because he was a plus 250 underdog. But it's always nice to see Dominic Reyes get a win, and it's just the cherry on top. We got that sweet, sweet knockout, nonetheless, in the very first round. And next up, we have a fight that made me angry. I was smacking the table because Jason Herzog, that was the worst stoppage I have seen in a long time. Jared Cannonier was out-muscling Nasruddin Scissorhands Imavov, because Nasruddin Imavov, it looked like John Jones in there. I had to wipe my eyes and make sure it wasn't John fighting because his fingers were outstretched the entire time. In the first 2 minutes, Jason Herzog gave a hard warning for it, and Imavov kept doing it, and even Jared Cannonier was taunting him because he just kept doing it. Luckily, Jared Cannonier didn't get eye poked this time, unlike Chris Curtis, who, if you recall, Chris Curtis was winning that fight until Nasruddin Imavov eye poked him and the fight couldn't be continued, which is why it was a no contest. Nasruddin Imavov is one of the dirtiest fighters in the UFC right now, and I am praying he gets flatlined, because Jared Cannonier was winning this fight up until the horrendous stoppage. If a fighter doesn't get dropped once, and he's not stumbling when the fight gets stopped, then I can't understand why you would stop it. Yeah, Jared got hurt like 10 seconds before the fight was stopped, but by the time Jason Herzog stepped in, he wasn't stumbling, he wasn't wobbled, he was firing back. Jared Cannonier was not happy. Even the commentators were not happy at all that the fight got ended that way. And honestly, I think Jared Cannonier was about to get the decision win. And I wish he did, because I'm not a fan of Imavov anymore. Before, I'm like, alright, fair enough, he got an eye poke and it was rough. But once you know, one time's a mistake, but once it's 2, 3, 4 fights, it's like, it's obvious that he's trying to game the system with the outstretched fingers, make his opponent be hesitant to come crashing in. Which I don't understand why, because Imavov is a good fighter. He's very technical on the feet, he's very good at takedown defense. And when the fight hits the ground, he's pretty good as well, so I don't understand why he's fighting so dirty. But yeah, screw Imavov. I'm not happy with this main event. Jared was up on the scorecards, and then Jason Herzog jumped the gun, and you could tell he was trying to justify to the commentators and everybody else why he stopped the fight, because 20 seconds after he stopped the fight, he was still trying to explain to the people outside of the octagon why the fight was stopped. Jared got screwed. He's 40 years old. He doesn't have many years left. I hope he doesn't retire anytime too soon, because he's still a beast. He showed very good movement, very good head movement. He had Imavov's head spinning around a few times, especially with one of them uppercuts. But yeah, like I said, that was atrocious. Screw Imavov. I hope he gets flatlined in his next fight, and I'm betting against him every single time. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way, because, yeah, if you watch that fight, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, at the end of the day, like I said, the first couple fights were snoozers. Wouldn't rewatch them at all. But then once the Zach Reese and the Julian Eros, once Zach Reese and the Cuban Missile Crisis fought, is when the fight really got insane, or the card got really insane. The main events were, or the main card I should say, was an absolute banger, certified, put a stamp on it. Very impressive performances from pretty much every single person. But I was worried in the beginning of this card because, yeah, it was decision after decision. Nobody was really close to getting finished. There were a few guys that stood out, like Daniel Marcos. He showed up really well. He looked very good. Same thing with Taylor Lapilus. We saw Pooja Tumar, the first Indian woman to fight in the UFC, get a dub, even though it was controversial. We also got to see Denise Gomes give Eduarda Mora her first loss, and she's only 23. She knocked out Yasmin Uruguay as well. She's just on an insane run right now. And we also got to see Carlos Paredes really stand out as well. But yeah, as always, if you guys like the content, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you guys have a great week.